I'm John Strum, and this is Real Talk MS. It's June 18th, and we have a lot to talk about. And one of the things we talk a lot about on this podcast is MS research, because I believe that research is the engine that drives the future. And I believe that participating in research is not only vital. Without participants, research quickly grinds to a halt. But if you haven't yet had the opportunity, I think you'll find that participating in research is empowering. It's an amazing feeling knowing that your efforts helped contribute to what scientists understand about MS. And the really good news here is that your participation in MS research can happen from the comfort of your own home. My guest today is Dr. Robert Fox. Dr. Fox is an MS expert who wears many important hats when it comes to MS treatment and research, including being the managing director of the North American Research Committee on Multiple Sclerosis, or NARCOMS. And today we're talking about the NARCOMS Patient Registry. You'll find out what that is and why I hope you'll consider being a part of it. But before we get to my conversation with Dr. Fox, there are a few other things that you should know about. One of the trends in science and medicine that we've been following is the emergence and growing importance of artificial intelligence as a technology that's going to have a profound effect on MS research and treatment. And when I say MS research and treatment, what I'm actually saying is all medical research and treatment, including MS. So although it isn't specific to multiple sclerosis, I think it's worth noting that Google's artificial intelligence company, DeepMind, has unveiled the third major version of its AlphaFold artificial intelligence model, created specifically to help scientists design drugs and target disease more effectively. Using this latest version of AlphaFold, researchers at DeepMind have mapped the behavior for all of life's molecules, including human DNA. And here's why that's an important breakthrough. The key to drug discovery and development is the interactions of proteins with other molecules. And a major bottleneck in drug development is physically producing biological designs that can test how well specific proteins and molecules bind together. Using AlphaFold's capabilities, scientists can design a molecule that will bind to a specific place on a protein and then accurately predict how strongly it's going to bind, which reduces the time and money needed to develop potentially life-changing treatments. DeepMind has also released a free online tool that scientists can use to test their hypotheses with just a few clicks of their mouse before running expensive real-world tests. Since 2021, AlphaFold's AI predictions have been made freely accessible to researchers as part of a database containing more than 200 million protein structures. This latest version of AlphaFold brings AI-driven drug development a major step closer, which brings scientists a major step closer to developing those next-generation MS treatments more quickly than ever before. A couple of years ago, 2 large-scale studies provided conclusive evidence that MS is triggered by the Epstein-Barr Virus, or EBV. Now, exactly how the Epstein-Barr Virus leads to MS still isn't well understood, so there's been quite a bit of research focused on answering this question. Newly published results from one study show that during an MS relapse, dormant Epstein-Barr virus cells become activated and trigger inflammatory activity in multiple types of immune cells. So let's take a moment to review some things about the Epstein-Barr virus. Somewhere between 90 and 95% of the world's population is infected by EBV by the time they reach adulthood. After the initial infection, EBV becomes inactive and takes up residence in B cells, which are a type of immune cell. And in certain situations, these dormant EBV cells can become active again, which triggers a new round of infection. So in this study, the research team looked at B cells from 3 groups of EBV-infected people. They analyzed B cells from people with MS who had at least one active lesion on MRI, which would be considered active disease. They analyzed B cells from people with MS who did not have any active lesions, which would be considered stable disease. And they analyzed B cells from people who didn't have MS at all. And they found that the Epstein-Barr virus was more active in the B cells of people with active MS than it was in the people with stable MS or the people who didn't have MS. And this increase in viral activity in B cells during active MS was accompanied by an increase in inflammatory activity in these cells. Now keep in mind that B cells play a major role in driving MS-related inflammation. In fact, several disease-modifying therapies work by targeting these B cells. So the researchers hypothesized that reducing the EBV activity within these B cells might also reduce the B cell-driven inflammation, the inflammation that drives MS. Next, the research team tested 3 antiviral compounds that block EBV activity, and they found that one of the 3 safely reduced the damaging immune response without destroying the B cells, leaving the immune system intact. Now, this very encouraging news is tempered by the fact that these experiments were done in lab models that might not fully reflect how human cells are going to react, and the study itself was small. But the results of the study demand that broader research is done to more fully explore this potential treatment pathway. If you'd like to review the details of this study, you'll find a link in today's show notes. On Thursday, June 20th, the International Progressive MS Alliance is hosting a global webcast on mobility challenges in progressive MS, presenting new information to monitor and maximize mobility. People with MS often encounter mobility challenges and limitations, including difficulty walking, abnormal gait, loss of balance, fatigue, and weakness. Fortunately, there are treatments and assistive devices currently available to help improve mobility. In this webcast, you'll hear from a panel of 3 researchers who are dedicated to finding ways to diagnose people's individual mobility challenges more quickly and accurately to facilitate quicker interventions with solutions designed to help improve mobility and ultimately the quality of life for people living with MS. The webcast is happening at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, that's 5 p.m. Central European Time, this Thursday, June 20th. And I'll add that even if you aren't able to catch the live event, by registering, you'll receive a link for the video replay. So if you'd like to learn more or register for this upcoming event, you'll find a link in today's show notes. We're about 6 weeks away from Crush MS, an event in Napa Valley, California that raises money for MS research. I attended Crush MS this past summer, and I'm planning to be back this year for the 10th anniversary of Crush MS. So if you think you might enjoy a summer afternoon in California's wine country, enjoying great wine from 24 Napa Valley wineries, amazing food, and live music, I hope you'll make plans to join me at Reed Family Vineyards on July 27th for Crush MS. For more information or to buy your tickets, just visit crushms.org and you'll find that link in today's show notes. Attending events that support MS research is one way for you to support the work being done in laboratories around the world to stop MS progression, regain lost function, and end MS forever. Or you could take a more active role and choose to participate in MS research. And the good news here is that you can even find ways to participate in research without having to leave your home. Joining me in a moment for a deep dive into the NARCOMS patient registry is the Managing Director of the North American Research Committee on Multiple Sclerosis, Dr. Robert Fox. Dr. Robert Fox is a neurologist at the Cleveland Clinic's Mellon Center for Multiple Sclerosis Treatment and Research, as well as a vice chair of research at the Cleveland Clinic Neurological Institute. Dr. Fox is also a professor of neurology at the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine. He chairs the International Progressive MS Alliance Scientific Steering Committee, and Dr. Fox serves as the managing director of the NARCOMS Patient Registry. Welcome back to the podcast, Dr. Fox.
John, it is great to be back with you again, and I've enjoyed your podcast for a long time, and it's great to give back to it again.
So for our listeners who may not be familiar with NARCOMS, can you explain what NARCOMS is and what it does?
Sure. So NARCOMS stands for the North American Research Committee on Multiple Sclerosis, which is quite a mouthful. That's why we call it NARCOMS. It is a registry of people living with MS. And essentially, it's a long-term MS patient registry where MS patients provide information about their MS over the course of their MS. We are a project of the Consortium of MS Centers, which is a nonprofit organization of MS care professionals and MS centers that work together to improve the lives of those affected by MS. And so we work under their auspices, under their direction. The core of the registry is a semi-annual questionnaire in the spring and in the fall. And there are sometimes additional questionnaires that typically target a specific issue that people living with MS may have. For example, we might do an extra questionnaire about bladder problems and their management. And for that, we would only invite people who report on the main survey that they have some bladder problems. But the main core of the survey is twice a year in the late spring and late fall, a survey that can be done either online or on paper, where people tell us about what's going on with their MS. And we have very structured questions, structured format. There are some questions that we administer every time, some that we just do once a year, and others that we just do on a one-time based on what we're interested in asking people about.
How long has NARCOMS existed?
So NARCOMS has actually been around for quite a while. It was started in 1993 by Dr. Tim Vollmer, who at that point was at Yale, but later went to Phoenix and eventually ended his career in Denver. He has now since retired. But after a little while, the database itself was located in Birmingham, Alabama. Now, currently, we have a three-part leadership of NARCOMS. So I am the managing director. I'm located here in Cleveland, as you said. Ruth Ann Mary is a neurologist and a PhD trained epidemiologist, and she's the scientific director. So she drives the science aspects of the registry. She's located up in Canada. And Amber Salter is our third leader. She is a PhD-trained statistician and database management expert. She hosts the database and directs the statistical analysis of the database. She's located down in Dallas, Texas at UT Southwestern. So that is how it started and how it's evolved to where it is now.
And how many people with MS are currently registered in the database?
So we have over 40,000 people that are currently registered in the database. Now, that's a very large number, and that is since 1993 when we first got started. Now, most of those patients, unfortunately, are no longer connected with us. We haven't heard from them. Now, some we would expect have passed away, and some maybe have just lost interest in NARCOMS. So we are currently following a little over 8,000 patients regularly through our semi-annual survey.
Why would someone want to participate in this type of survey research? What's in it for them?
Well, the main reason people might want to participate is to help us, help the world understand about MS, which is their disease. So they have a very selfish interest in helping science, helping medicine understand their disease. We give an opportunity for people to share directly from themselves how the disease affects them. We also give an opportunity for people to compare their results to other people with MS. We also provide a magazine 3 to 4 times a year, which provides feedback about the surveys for people to learn a little bit of what were the results of the questionnaires they took 6 or 12 months before. We also provide some update about what's going on in the MS field, and they're on different topics. And we appreciate, John, you being interviewed for our upcoming but speaking out about MS and sharing knowledge and spreading knowledge. But at the end of the day, people participate because they want this disease that is inside of them to be made aware out to the world. What's also really nice is it's a way to participate in MS research from the comfort of your own home, from the comfort of your living room or your kitchen or your home office. You can obviously do it anywhere. We do the surveys online or by paper. We prefer online just because it's a little more efficient with the electronic. We don't have to enter the data by hand from a paper form. But it allows people to be engaged in clinical research about their disease from the comfort of their home.
And I think that people are going to find that participating in this kind of research, it's empowering. You're part of a future solution. So I see it as a great opportunity to be a part of figuring MS out.
Well, it is being a part, and it's getting active and not letting MS get you, but getting MS by revealing to the world how MS has affected you. Of course, MS affects people very differently and in different ways. They respond to medications and various treatment in different ways. And the only way we can learn about that is to ask people and collect the data, collect the information.
Could you share some examples of the kinds of questions NARCOMS asks in its surveys?
We've asked all sorts of questions about MS, and really it's limitless as to what we can ask about MS and how it affects people's lives. We ask questions about their symptoms, about therapies that they've used for MS, both disease-modifying therapies as well as symptom therapies, and other ways of treating various symptoms of MS. We've also asked questions about their diet, about physical activity, about cost of their MS care, and the help that they may need or that they may have available to help them with MS for those that need help. We've even asked things like their perspective on physician-assisted death. Now, physician-assisted death is not something we think about as being relevant to MS, but it is still something that some patients may consider at some point in their disease. And so we've asked patients, well, what would your perspectives be? Recognizing the legality of that varies across the country and in different countries. But there really is no limit to what we can ask. And people are very giving and honest and candid with their views and their opinions regarding these various things.
So NARCOMS collects all this information from thousands of people. How is it actually used?
Well, the information itself is collected into a database called REDCap. It's an electronic data collection system. It's hosted on secure servers at the University of Texas Southwestern, so password encoded with backup servers in case the one server crashes or has a fire or anything like that. At the end of each survey collection, we clean the data and we merge the data with other surveys so that we can store and use the data. Now, we keep the data safe. The personal identifying information like the name and the email address and the mailing address, that is kept separate from the other data. So all of the other data is kept referenced just to a patient identifier. That participant identifier is used in all of our analyses, and those the identification of the participant is not derived from any personal identifying information like date of birth or zip code or anything like that. We don't share any of the personal information or contact information with outside parties. When we do mailings, those mailings come directly from us because we don't share the address or the email address or the mailing address with anyone outside of the NARCOMS group. And finally, the paper surveys are kept securely locked in cabinets within the university and in storage. Eventually, they're shredded once we're confident that we don't need those paper surveys anymore.
Well, thank you for explaining that, because I know how important privacy is for, well, probably all of us, and especially
absolutely
when you're sharing things online, people can have concerns, and it sounds like this system really does everything necessary to protect an individual's identity. And if I heard you correctly, it sounds like the information that NARCOMS collects is never sold. It's never used for marketing, things like that. Is that correct?
That is correct. We never sell our data. We do not provide any data for marketing. We never provide personal identifying data to any outside group. We are purely focused on doing research. Now, we do collaborate with other researchers. They can be researchers in academia, from societies like the National MS Society, from the National Institutes of Health, and sometimes from industry as well. So we love to work with other researchers because we only know so much, the people within NARCOMS, so we appreciate when other people join us with new ideas and new thoughts and new directions to take our data set.
So what's next for NARCOMS? Can you give us an idea of what's on the horizon?
Well, we have a couple things on the horizon. First, we need more people to enroll in NARCOMS. So 5 years from now, all of our participants will be 5 years older, of course, and be 5 years further in their disease course. So we are particularly dependent upon people newly diagnosed with MS to join our registry, so we have good representation of those early in the MS disease course. Now, we do take everyone across the whole span of MS, so if you're beyond 5 years or 10 years, we still welcome people to join us. We've increased our social media activity to both help with recruitment and just help with people recognizing NARCOMS. For example, people can follow us on X, formerly called Twitter. Our handle is at NARCOMS1993 to be a reminder of our original origin founding in 1993. We also have an Instagram account. We are starting to expand now to collect biological samples. So we are starting with genetic data for people who are willing to provide it. Some people don't want to provide anything that might look at their genes, which is totally fine. But for those who are willing, we are starting a small project funded by through a federal grant that will do a simple cheek swab. A swab of the cheek, and that scraping would then be put into a mailer and sent back to us, which we can then analyze for the genetic data to help us interconnect genetic information about a participant with their MS disease course and all of the rich data we've already collected on people with MS. So a bunch of things that we're looking for down the road.
So how can someone start participating in NARCOMS?
Well, the easiest way is to go to our website. It is cleverly named narcoms.org, narcoms.org. And once there, the main page has a link. Click here to enroll online. And that's it. You can enroll online. You can choose whether you want to participate via paper, and we'll mail you a survey, or online, and then we use an email address. If you have been participating in NARCOMS in the past and somehow lost touch and lost connection to us, we welcome to have you back. Again, through the NARCOMS website, there is information to email, there's phone number, and there's a mailing address. Any way you want to reach out to us, we're happy to connect with you. And there are other registries registries, of course. Individual MS clinics have registries. There are a few other registries as well around the country and around the world. And it's important for people to recognize there usually anyway is no limitation to how many registries to be a part of. So if you're a part of a registry one place, you can still provide data to NARCOMS. And if you're in NARCOMS, you can provide data to those other registries. There's nothing that would preclude people from participating in 2, 3, or 4 registries. Our surveys take somewhere in the area of about a half hour to 40 minutes twice a year, and most surveys are around that length as well. So it is a very easy way for people to help researchers like us learn about their MS.
Sounds easy and so worthwhile. I mean, listen, if you have an hour a year to donate, I should say to invest in the future of MS research, you want to visit narcoms.org, and that link will, of course, be in our show notes. Dr. Robert Fox, thank you for all you do to improve the lives of people living with MS. Thank you for introducing our listeners to NARCOMS today, and thanks so much for talking with me.
It's a pleasure, John. Thank you for all you do to teach the MS community all about MS.
That's going to wrap up this episode of Real Talk MS. Real Talk MS is powered by the National MS Society. And you can share this episode of the podcast by letting your friends or family members know that all they have to do is point their web browser at realtalkms.com/355. You'll find that link in today's show notes, so you can easily copy and paste it right into an email or a text. I hope you'll join me next week for a special conversation with the President and CEO of the National MS Society, Cindy Zagiboilo. After a 39-year career at the National MS Society, including 13 years as President and CEO, Cindy is retiring on July 1st. I sat down with Cindy to talk about some of the fundamental changes in MS care and treatment that have taken place and the impact of some of the most important initiatives the MS Society has undertaken during her tenure as its president and CEO. You don't hear me say this often, but this is a conversation that anyone affected by multiple sclerosis will want to hear. And if you have a minute, I hope you'll pay a visit to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store and download the free Real Talk MS app for your iOS or Android smartphone or tablet. It's the best way for us to stay connected. The app will automatically download the latest episode of Real Talk MS. You'll be able to access any of our past episodes. You'll be able to save your favorite episodes. And it's a great way for me to share bonus content with you. The app is free, so I hope you'll download it today. I'm John Strum. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and make healthy choices.